so much like it's so easy to like do stuff. Like it's so much easier. Like I mean, like you can just see like I designed that in like a week and a half. Like I mean, you saw like how long it took me to design the desktop sample server.
Yeah.
Now, granted, a lot of my skills have gotten better, but it's like it's so easy to just make to just create like cool like stuff. I don't know, on the web.
It's not kind of branching out. You were thinking of the artwork. That's a huge thing to add to, and so would actually whatever you're comfortable with doing as far as like scripting audios, doing voice work, or doing on-camera work, and you've done all that before. So those are all talents you can actually add to this.
Yeah, yeah, anything. I guess maybe we can. I'm not sure when you feel it'd be good at a good time to start like planning out the structure for the tutorials and what we want to do as far as that. But the sooner we do that, probably the sooner we can get started as far as like the developing like voice files and videos and things like that.
That's awesome. Okay. So, yeah, so probably the first thing on that, I think I talked about it last time. I will make sure I do it. Sorry, you know, my memory's crap.
Oh, you're totally fine. Yeah.
But send the art. But I have been thinking about it. I have been thinking about it, which is like basically what would be the sequences of quizzes, the sequences of collages to take them. Yeah, let's worry about the survey later. That'll be its own thing that comes before this. But right now, let's go from the point of view this person wants to learn. Like they want to learn how it works. So then,
yeah, I think so, because yeah, a survey is kind of like it's
that's where
because a survey is like partially for them, but it's like also partially for us. It's like a tool to that can be helpful as far as introducing someone, but it's also a tool that's used to collect data. That's something can be very useful, but it might be good to design the system so that like no matter that a person can just like jump in. They don't need to take a survey. We can still use a survey layer, of course, but it's not like required in order to, you know. So.
But I was also thinking that the survey would be a really super simple, super concentrated, super short version of what they're going to do later on anyway in the program. Do you know what I mean? So the survey will be designed to primarily be pretty much like collage training as you do in the program. We'll just be making it super short and concentrated and very hand-holdy, like, you know, super hand-holdy, super short, and like the cleanest, simplest samples we can use. Oh, I was talking to Jailene about that, about this gets into the ARC, is how to teach it. And I'm trying to think how I've talked to you guys over the years. I've talked to Jailene, and there is a difference, and it's important to note this, from someone coming in from the point of view of learning to read, and I think we'll make that the focus. That's important, because they need to learn the math of that. This is critical as far as what we're doing as far as presentation, in order to be able to do the reading of people. But people who want to take the survey and want to initially play in the collage are people who are interested in reading people and then having why that works explained to them. That's very important, because I've noticed, and Jailene and I are talking about this, when I'm teaching it just the math, it makes sense to teach directive, adaptive, different fields, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And you kind of go by what is the math of it. And that starts with directive, adaptive, momentum modulation. And that is how you would learn it. If your primary interest was learning how it worked under the hood, right? And then the secondary interest is, oh, what does that look on a human's face, right? But this audience, the most important is, how do you read the person's face? And then secondary, how does that trick work? i.e., what's the math that makes it like that? So what she and I are talking about is, I think it's actually emoting. So like for the survey, maybe like 3 levels, like 3 short things, and 1 for gear 1, 1 for gear 2, 1 for gear 3. We won't do gear 3, 4, or 5 because that you have to do a lot of training before those make sense. So we'll do just those 3, maybe even just the first 2. but we're talking about it is basically tracking emoting. So gear one, there's different powers cues that we get into, but the easiest one to track in general for people is the mouth. Is it Jai unaware or is it Ji aware? Right? So these new people, the first thing they're going to be looking at is the mouth, which gives off strong cues. The mouth gives off strong cues, and telling apart Jai and Ji is a first gear cue. Probably it's the as far as like, because basically it's like teaching someone to track. That's the most pronounced cue, right? You know, all the 8 powers of all the things that are out there. I think that what the mouth thing, we use that so much in our Mojo reading at a high level now that we've been doing it for a few years, but also in the beginning, I think it was the first things, all of you, including Jailene, and myself, when I was trying to teach Jailene, like, I think I'm seeing something here. I didn't do directive adaptive yet. Once you can read all the cues, you then see that the directive adaptive is actually running everything. But that's only after you can see all the cues. If you're starting to like build up which cues you can see, the emotive ones, because they are designed to grab people's attention. That's what they're there for. Even unaware emoting is still designed to affect Ji the way it does. It's meant to have an effect that way. So that would be the first gear one. Very short. We'll make samples that like their Jai is the Jai-ish Jai we can find in our entire collection. And then a very small sampling of Ji and the Ji-ish Ji we can possibly Ji. You know what I mean? And try to tell apart those things like clear downward turns, clear upward turns, just the cleanest, most distinct samples, and short.
Yeah, I think that'll make it like it'll make the process so much easier of just explaining what we're talking about. Like even though like, oh, sorry.
Yes, it's exactly. It's simple and it's focused.
Yeah, because like even though most people aren't going to have like qualities that are like that pronounced, it gives you a sense of what we're talking about, and that makes it easier to see it in other people, or in cases where it's not quite as obvious or not quite as physically apparent.
They still count. They're real samples. But I see what you're saying. They're the easiest ones, so we're really trying to make it super easy, but it still counts. And the way you look at it is like tracking. You have a whole range of difficulty, including what I do a lot, which is I do photo reading and limited media reading. I actually still read it, but I mean it would be considered limited media for most other readers. And so that's like tracking, where you're getting like very faint paw prints. You know what I mean? Very old, lots of water, lots of things messing up the print, and you're trying to actually find. That's like the hardest. You know what I mean? After that, it's like it may be unreadable. Okay. So whatever it is for any tracker, I'm not trying to say what the actual is in technical terms. I'm saying there's a point at which you can read it with the barest faint signals, and then you can't read anymore. Then there's the other side, which is what we're trying to give them. Is you're trying to teach someone how to track like who knows nothing. These are like kids, but this is still tracking. It's kid level tracking. It's still tracking. You would actually take them out to a place that actually has like 3, 4, or 5 different animals that happen to be in nature fairly different footed. And then you wait till ideal conditions. I don't know exactly what those be. Let's say like the ideal amount of raininess, where it gives you the perfect mud for casting an imprint of a paw that you could possibly get. But still, that's nature. That still counts. That mud happens in nature, and those animals walked across it naturally. It sticks there, and now you bring kids over. Is that a bear or is that a moose? Real simple. You're like, that's so simple. But still, Ben, doesn't that count? Those were naturally made tracks, and you were telling apart a moose track and a bear track, and that's the range. The most obvious thing, if you could take a kid who never did tracking in their life and go, can you tell that apart? Yes, you're tracking. Now it's a question of what can you track, because there's a whole spectrum of how subtle the cues you have to work with. So start with like, bam, like in like clay, clay tracks for kids, but still that's nature. So like, for example, like, some Ziny, talking about when they come on quizzes or something, you're like, that person's so Ziny. Like you almost feel guilty for getting the right answer because it's so easy to like say, I'm a Ziny. Like, their whole features, they're like, they don't have anything that makes it hard to see they're a Ziny. but they still count. So taking all those kind of samples we can for each thing in the beginning, it gives them that initial, that paw print in the cleanest, easiest to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, because like sometimes on quizzes and stuff, when you don't when you're kind of when it's a sample that doesn't require that you focus as much on their cues as you otherwise would need to, that sort of makes you feel a little bit guilty. You're like, well, okay,
it's just easier.
I mean, that was kind of obvious based on this, and this, but it's I feel like I should have been, it should have been more of a challenge.
You know what? You know a good analogy for this is? Because I've been listening to some, I listen to different things that I don't do personally, but I like the metaphor: surfing, diving, climbing, for example, making swords. I don't do any of that myself personally, but I think it makes good metaphors. What I'm doing right now is tracking. I'm listening to tracking stuff, the high level principles of how it works. There's so much that relates to Moja reading on that. For trackers who actually can do the most obvious tracks up to medium tracks, there's a level at which seems very easy to you, but actually humans who aren't trained in tracking actually can't do it. Do you know what I mean? And you always feel guilty for taking their money, but I mean, technically as a tracker, you make your money for any track you can track that nobody over here can do. And a lot of times no one else, there's very few people right now, very few people who actually have that kind of tracking ability.
Mm-hmm.
Human soul tracking.
Yeah, you spend so much time doing it that the things that are easy to you aren't necessarily going to be easy to somebody who has never done it before. So it still has a significant amount of relevance and value.
Exactly, because that's when I was telling myself, I'm like, well, how many other people on this planet would get that question right? Over half the planet or somewhere around there would actually say, there's no qualia, or if it is, it doesn't look. Oh yeah, first of all, I think a lot of people would say there's no qualia. Those that would agree to that would say, yeah, but it has nothing to do with mathematical 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 stuff. And those that do agree on something of that order, like typology, they actually don't do face reading, people reading. They actually do conjecture writing. You know what I mean? Who can actually write the best written description of something you should just be looking at. So actually, you are in a very, very small, awesome superhero, boss hero, elite group of people who actually can make those tracks out right now. Although, for you, you're like, that's not that hard. You're like a Jedi, you're like, that's not even hard levitation. Yeah, but so few people can do any levitating at all. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of people running around who can levitate stuff with their mind. You're like, that's so light. That was easy. Yeah, that's on a Jedi scale.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, because there's relative difficulty. Certain skills are going to be easier than others. Certain tasks are going to be easier than others. But at the end of the day, what really matters is what can you actually do. If you could do that, but then other people couldn't, that's really where the value is. So it's
that's a very valuable and right now a very rare and challenging feat. We want to get others to do, and that's what we're actually talking about as well on the program, is how to get other people to which is why I'm listening to tracking principles. I'm listening to all these different things, the thing you brought up about the teaching math. I think there's a lot of great metaphors for how math is taught, because there is some math elements to what is going on with the phenomenon, but it's also tracking. There's a lot of principles of how you read degrees of subtlety, coarse cues versus subtle cues. Cues that are there all the time, whether they're subtle or pronounced, versus cues that are intermittent. I was like, you know what I mean? That actually something that relates very much to what we do. You know what I mean? The various cues to face, momentum cues versus modulation cues and so forth. So I'm trying to find all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. You're saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because one of the things that we can do, I'm thinking of, is especially with the first gear cues, we can find we can find images that have like particular first gear cues, like a squint or something, or would that be? I think that's first gear, but like, you know, like squints and drifts and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And we can use those, and it becomes a lot easier to see those cues because there's a pronounced expression that a person is doing in their face.
And those are,
that would certainly,
in case you're wondering, yes, those definitely are first gear cues.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, so
yeah, second gear is more like I guess like objective and subjective.
Well, yeah, it's all the energy fields, and that gets back to what I was saying, talking to Jarlene about that concentrated thing in the survey, for example, is if they want to do a little more than just the Jai Ji, the next step on that would be, and by the way, this order, on the larger scale of the overall program, I'm thinking as far as like that arc I was telling you about, I think maybe this is how we'll teach it. We'll start with, when they do the first gear cues, we actually teach them Jai and Ji first. Because the purposes of reading the tracks of human physiological cues, you know, qualia cues, that's the one that's easiest to actually see for a new tracker, right? For a newbie tracker, if you had to point something else, I would point out to the mouth. Then that brings up the second gear. Again, I would stay in that theme, which is of all the different things that are going on there, if you can read, again, if you can read all 10 fields successfully, then you can tell that the directive adaptive field is running the other fields. But if you're not at the level where you have gotten where you can read the subtlety of all 10 of the fields, the easiest fields to read is logic-based, values-based. So again, second gear will also focus on the values-based powers. Do you know what I mean? In this case, how high they go up the face. And then for third gear, I'm thinking we don't even go into a full mojo. We go into an alchemy. And actually, we'll have to give it a name. Maybe you can help us think it up. Jarlene and I were wondering about this. Do you know in change flow, there's going from interpretive to literal, or literal to interpretive,
yeah.
Right? That thing. We don't have it in social alchemy. We definitely need it. I didn't have a name for it, which why I didn't do it. But now I'm actually thinking it's like, oh, I don't want to call it this, but something to do with the fact that you can see from mojo reading. This grouping is a grouping that goes from Zez to Jez and Jez to Zez.
Yeah.
And so for third gear, that is what we focus on, the social alchemy of, can you tell how high up this is going? And so just breaking down, you know, source level Jez, you know, tandem, offside, or polar, or the set your reverse for Zez, but basically like, you know, how that works.
Yeah. I think that's
I think that will be, and we'll do fourth and fifth gear also in the program. But I think fourth and fifth gear, Ben, because they are based on you having a higher volume of samples in your head, fourth gear riffing, or a higher degree of dedication to the craft, that you want to increase the self-development portion, the self-mastery portion, which is fifth gear. So those might even be like unlockable. But still, I think for the survey, we'll probably stop at third gear. I think that's a strong progression. It would only be one set for each one. It would be the values-based set. So first gear, Jai versus Ji, aware versus unaware. Second gear, logic-based versus values-based. Do the cheeks move, right? Just focus on that one. And then third gear, okay, how high up does it go? Does it go in the cheeks but not the eyes, right? Well, we are a Jez tandem. Or is it very localized as compared to just, you know, moderately localized? So, you know, I mean, like, you know, Zai-Ni versus Ni-Zai. So anyway, I think that would be the arc we focus on. You know what I mean? And then as they get into it and expand, we'll explain how the math actually works, including the fact that when they do get to the directive adaptive section, we'll say this is a primary dichotomy, but it doesn't come up. We may bring it up second. We'll say the reason this wasn't first was because of such and such. But anyway, exactly, this gets the point. I don't know exactly where we will order it. I have to think on this. This is really good, but I'm going to think of it in terms of first gear, second gear, so on, but not just the math, but what would be the order of ease? And so I may even have to ask you guys some questions via email. We can get into that. But I have some ideas on like what was the easiest things you guys picked up and has consistently been what people note first on the various gears. You know what I mean? And teach in the order of which one are hardest, easiest to see to hardest to see, as compared to under the hood, which makes which gear go. Hey, Mitchell.
Hello.
Hey, Mitchell.
You guys are talking about the new teaching tool that we're creating?
Well, actually, we're talking about the overall sort of arc of how we want to script out their learning experience, including later on perhaps some audio or video tutorials that are in a nice little sequence. And so short version is, Mitchell, that I've been talking with Jailene, and I think the best way to do that, I'm listening to a lot of like tracking videos to get high level principles that be applicable here, is because of the audience. If you already accept that this is a thing and you want to learn about it, then you want to go with the math, which is directive, adaptive, momentum modulation runs everything. But for Mojo reading, actually the primary thing is, can they see it? And so we should teach from that perspective. And so there you want to go with basic tracking, which is which cues are the easiest to see. And you go in that order, even though some cues may actually be more relevant in certain ways, you go in the order that the tracker's eye can pick it up, and then you kind of go finer. So with that, what me and Jailene are talking about is roughly we'll start at least gear 1, 2, and 3 with the JES, because that's a very focused way to learn, and it is the first thing I think that pops out. So gear 1, real fast, Giant G, that tends to be something to be focused on as far as powers, telling them apart. Gear 2, the field of logic-based values big, do the cheeks move. That's one that can, and it builds off that one they did in gear 1. And then gear 3, this we were talking about, is actually a social alchemy we haven't come up with yet because I didn't have a name for its purpose, but now I do. Is teach Mojo reading, which is we have in change flow interpretive to literal, literal to interpretive rankings, right? We need a correlate for that. I don't know the name of it yet, but it's going to be, you know, from JES to ZES, from logic-based to values-based and vice versa. So a correlate kind of alchemy, and that I believe is what we will teach early on to tell apart. And so for gear 3, the first alchemy they might learn is polar, you know, JES, offside JES, tandem JES, or source JES. And so that makes and so those might be the only 3 things that are covered in the survey. You are now fully brought up to speed.
Interesting. So it's like a flow of discernment.
In this case, even though, like I said, as we teach them later on the other things, Mitchell, one principle in this is, if you can see, for example, gear 2, all 10 energy fields, you have that ability, then you can see how the clock works. And then you can see that directive, adaptive, momentum modulation is running everything. But if you're building up to being able to see all 10 energy fields at all, then the first energy field you would go with would be logic-based, values-based, because that tends to be easier for people to pick out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because for example, you guys, this is kind of good to note, is you came in with like a dual interest in both learning what's under the hood and learning how to do the actual reading of the physiological cues, which is more like a tracking kind of knowledge, which is great. It has made great to train you guys. But now I noticed that like there's different focuses for those, for example, and Mitchell, a lot of the work that you talked about, I think will be really instrumental here, is people who really want to get into the math of why it works and all the kind of nuance of that makes sense, builds strength in their mind.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that their main thing is like, well, you guys sound like you have some good ideas, but I don't see it yet. And until I do, I'm not budging at all. I'm giving no mental space, which is a legit position to take, of until I see it myself. And so I'm like, okay, what are the things I got for you guys to do at the same time? Because also the fact that you guys had typology backgrounds meant that as I was explaining to you what the cues were and pointing them out, I was simultaneously doing the math. So we didn't really separate them. But I'm now noticing that there are some audiences that really prefer one side of that equation to the other. And I think for the sample server program, the audience might, these are like, I got to think like video game players. They want to see the game of the cues. They want to play the game of tracking the visuals. And so I really want to hit them like, bam, you know what I mean? We want to give that audience what it wants, which is they want to see, they say there's cues. Let's see. Okay, let's give them the one that'll grab them and carry them the strongest and easiest. Well,
yeah, I think, and we can also, another thing we can do is, like for those samples that we think are, you know, really poppy, we can also find pictures that are like the poppiest of that particular sample and make it even more obvious. So
exactly. Okay, so if you guys don't have anything more in there, we can go ahead and get into our session. That was a great conversation. Felt good.
yeah, I enjoyed that.
All right, you guys all set?
Yeah.
All right,
Yep,
so
I'm set.
I am Najee Coach. With me, I have Najee, Mitchell, and Ben. And who hasn't gone first in a while?
I'm not sure if
I haven't
Mitchell's
been here
gone
in a
first, but
Okay, Mitchell. You wanna, what's that, Mitchell?
I said I haven't even been here in a while.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have anything you want to share, or do you want Ben to go first? Sherry?
I don't mind. I mean, I guess I have something. I haven't been able to work on as much as I like. I'll be finishing with school soon, so that'll be great. And I'll have so much more time to do everything. But
I got you.
yeah, I can't wait for that. But yeah, so I totally finished. Like, well, I say totally finished. I mean, I'm still willing to tweak it, but I have like a beat. Like
Nice.
I haven't, and I mean, I've thought a lot more about it. I haven't like done any of the other beats. I only done one still, but like I've thought a lot more about them and just, you know, how it all fits together and other things I want to say. All right, so I'm kind of ready to like unspool it. It shouldn't take too much time at this point.
All right.
I get working on it. But you want to hear the beat?
Yes, please.
Yeah, my first beat is basically, so it was my whole section thing started with growing up for my younger years. I'm going to say exactly what I want to call it yet, but then the first beat was, I guess I should just say it, because they don't really, each beat isn't really a title. All right, so from my earliest memories, my most pervasive feeling has been an incessant fanatical drive to understand existence all the way out to its most beautiful exotic reaches and strangest nooks, developing eclectic encyclopedic stores of knowledge in the process. Even cars provided a window into people's souls for me as a young lad. Just by looking at someone's keys, I could identify the car they drove, which gives you much information about their tastes, prestige, social class, etc. Far more alluring for me were the yawning depths of the void and all its uncanny inhabitants, the dancing coronas of stars, red giants, blue giants, gamma ray bursting pulsars, the scorched plains of Mercury, the frost-strewn rainbows of Saturn, the airy blues of Neptune, the mind, space, and light-bending properties of black holes, and so on. I memorized all the moons, the distances from the sun, their length of orbit, etc. At recess during elementary school, I would travel around the universe as different planets imagined as a collective family, encountering new galaxies and objects and wondering what the very limits of the universe were. Thoughts like these naturally gave in to fascination with death and possibilities of existence in this world, which caused me to study natural disasters like tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes. I love to collect and through graphical books on these subjects, transfixed by the sublime and grotesque horrors wrought by Mother Nature. My aesthetic sense even grew to have a taste for exotic gems like diamonds, sapphires, and amethysts, which I would delight in comparing in terms of preciousness, durability, color, and structural properties. There was something profound to me in that something so precious could be simultaneously so durable and powerful. And nowadays, diamonds are being used to effect the first physical realizations of quantum computers, since they protect its extremely fragile processes from the phenomenon of decoherence ubiquitous to quantum systems. In short, I am a collector of knowledge, of rare beauty, and of understanding. And my most current collection is my internet system on the order of some 1,000 tabs, which I can navigate competently, and contains a wealth of utterly fascinating papers, blogs, and articles written by people like me in the trenches on a quest to understand the universe.
Excellent. One thing, though, is that was all great content, but there is still the need to be able to transmit one significant point within somewhere around a minute or so.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if perhaps this isn't 2 beats.
How long was it? I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah, maybe, do you mind reading it again like you did just there, and we'll time it this time? Because
Yeah, I think maybe doing it at a sort of a slower, more like standard speaking pace, because you were speaking kind of quickly.
it was good for me. Was it too fast for you?
I think it's probably like we tend to speak when we read things out during the Hangouts. It tends to be faster. Like do you notice the pace I'm speaking at now?
Right.
That's a little bit more how I would normally speak
Right.
if I was just talking to someone. So, but that was like probably twice as fast. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you were going to speak to somebody without,
Right, but you that's true, but and I agree to what you're saying to an extent, but there's also a charge level speaking where you're speaking faster than you normally speak, but it is still good speech. And that's a speech that a lot of comedians use. A lot of witty dialogue is delivered this way. And so you're right, it's not as fast as just reading it off a script, but it's not as slow as even like normal conversation. It's a little more than that. Does that make sense?
sure, yeah. And I'm not saying it should be as slow as that, but that certainly is an example of
No,
something a little bit.
I think a compromise can be made between those two
Right.
poles.
Yeah. So maybe just maybe I would try doing like if we're actually going to time it, I think maybe trying doing it a little bit slower, not necessarily like as slow as I'm speaking now, but
Right. Well, real quick, Mitchell, before you do it, yeah, go ahead and time. Let's time it.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say one more thing, which is that this beat, I mean, this is part of like a series of a few beats where I'm just talking about like my early interests. So I don't think splitting that up, if it needs to be taken out of like a minute and a half or something, that shouldn't be too big of a deal.
Yeah, I think a minute and a half is what we want to kind of cap these at. When I was doing mine, I try to not go over a minute and a half. I don't know if I usually kept it around a minute and try not to go over a minute and a half, just because you want these to be things that are kind of like little drops you make about yourself, and you can just do them, in most small social spaces.
Cool. All right, for my earliest memories, my most pervasive feeling has been an incessant fanatical drive to understand existence all the way out to its most beautiful exotic reaches and strangest nooks, developing eclectic encyclopedic stores of knowledge in the process. Even cars provided a window into people's soul for me as a young lad. Just by looking at someone's keys, I could identify the car they drove, which gives you much information about their taste, prestige, social class, etc. Far more alluring for me were the yawning depths of the void and all its uncanny inhabitants, the dancing coronas of stars, red giants, blue giants, gamma-ray bursting pulsars, the scorched plains of Mercury, the frost-strewn rainbows of Saturn, the airy blues of Neptune, the mind, space, and light-bending properties of black holes, and so on. I memorized all the moons, the distances from the sun, their length of orbit. At recess during elementary school, I would travel around the universe's different planets and manage it as a collective family, encountering new galaxies and objects and wondering what the very limits of the universe were. Thoughts like these naturally gave in to fascination with death and possibilities of existence within this world, which caused me to study natural disasters like tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, and I would love to collect and flip through graphical books on these subjects, transfixed by the sublime and grotesque horrors wrought by Mother Nature. My aesthetic sense even grew to have a taste for exotic gems like diamonds, sapphires, and amethysts, which I would delight in comparing in terms of preciousness, durability, color, and structural properties. There was something profound to me in that something so precious could be simultaneously so durable and powerful. Nowadays, diamonds are being used to effect the first physical realizations of quantum computers, since they protect its extremely fragile processes from the phenomenon of decoherence ubiquitous to quantum systems. In short, I am a collector of knowledge, of rare beauty, and of understanding. And my most current collection is my internet system on the order of about 1,000 tabs, which I can navigate competently and contains a wealth of utterly fascinating papers, blogs, and articles written by people like me in the trenches on a quest to understand the universe. All right,
You were
minute
talking pretty
57.
fast. You were talking pretty fast. So here's what I'm thinking. For me, I heard a very natural break. Now, I was going to bring it up ahead of time. When you transition, you make a strong kind of end to me when you said Mother Nature. And then when you said this then connects over to this other thing of gems, that could be the beginning of another beat.
Okay.
The gem beat.
Yeah, I agree that line does have like a kind of element to it.
And you also said a lot about your character in that first one, which is that basically you're like a seeker of all these mysteries. So you definitely kind of said you're like a seeker of mysteries. And then,
that's true. Like even just my first line kind of gave like what the beat is about a little bit.
So yeah, so I'll just maybe adjust it just slightly so it makes sense by that will now be your last sentence on a beat, and that transition sentence is actually going to be the first sentence I think of the next one.
Sure.
Yeah, because both those actually felt like good, solid concepts and gave me information about you as a heroic character. So that's actually 2 beats.
2 for 1.
So I'm definitely still in the process of like exactly reorganizing and like recombobulating exactly how many beats I want to have in each section and stuff. So I'm diverse doing.
But this is part of it too, is you realize, and it was a process for me as well, will continue to be, as you get the ideas in your head, and then you speak them out, and then you write them down, and then you time it, and then you say it on camera, and then you say it in front of a person, and then
I'll probably get more used to like getting a sense of how long it will probably take. Now that I'm getting some experience.
Yeah. But all those things, the timing of it, and also just the pressure of who's looking at you as you're doing it, all those things will improve it. Because these are things that your childhood isn't going to go away. So whether or not you're 20, 40, 60, 80, 140, whatever you are, that still happened. It would be nice to be able to express that to a person who didn't know you, of like that part of your life. And over time, if you keep doing it, and first you make it now, like a little, like first draft nugget. And then the pressure of you using it in life keeps making that nugget better and better and better until you can drop that anywhere, anytime, any audience. Cool. Okay. Do you have anything else? Or should we get
I don't have any other like beats laid out. I probably have more I could discuss about.
Okay, so let's actually go, Ben, with what you have ready to read out, and then we'll go back to Mitchell for playing with new stuff.
Yeah, go ahead and think about how I want to like connect with a beat we like sectioned off with maybe what the next one would be.
All right, sure. I'll go to my new stuff.
One second.
I
apologize. I really do. I got to just do a quick thing real quick. Sorry.
You're good.
Okay. So I'm sorry, we're saying?
Oh yeah. So I have 2 new beats that I made because I was a little bit short from 36. And I'm not sure if this actually fills out the rest entirely, but if it doesn't, then I'm like 1 or 2 off. But I would say for sure by next time I'll have all 36.
Nice. So that'll be just time to run that arc, right? Get them all written, and then you'll start saying them, doing like some drills on your own, once here, but then also on your own, of just like going through the entire thing in one setting, because then it gets smaller and smaller, and you can still, since you did them, see each nugget, but you'll start to kind of see what it makes as an arc, and then you can make little adjustments to each beat that's in that arc to make sure that arc is exactly what you want it to be.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some good improvements made along the way there.
That kind of like a purification run, that arc gives you like a sort of like a mental higher headspace to like run on, to build up like truth fire pressure of what you want to say.
Yeah, it really helps because a lot of times you forget as you're making these individual beats what the greater context of the arc and the story that you're trying to give. It's very effective for focusing in on one particular beat, and of course is necessary for that reason. But you also need to put it within context of the greater story and make sure that that's all held together as nicely as you'd like it.
Exactly.
The two beats I added were a beat about anime, and I also added a beat about the Fumasta, because I didn't actually have a beat about that. But I had the other major spirit forms already, so. All right. So besides playing games, I also spent a lot of time watching anime as a kid, and still watch it to this day. I didn't watch much TV growing up because, besides childhood cartoons, but I enjoyed anime because it was so violent and creative and unpolitically correct in so many different ways. It has taught me a lot about the shiny baby and my other, through the major theme of finding a sense of universal love that's so prevalent in Japanese anime, the teenage / young adult romance, and the speculative depictions of, speculatively there's depictions of Nijiz, male and female characters as well.
So very good. You'll, going from someone who doesn't know you at all, if you could do just a small fragment of what Nijiz is and why you mentioned it.
Yep. Sure. That should be pretty easy. So would it suffice to say Nijiz is Naiji and Nijai, or is that, do I actually have to go in and explain?
No, probably this is going to be a very, unknowing audience. So
Yeah.
Short and vague, but truthful is what you're going for. Not vague, I mean short and general. So, and then you can give more if that comes up, as long as it's truthful. So basically, saying the Nijiz is a kind of romantic or partner pairing that I think is really cool because I am that myself, or something, so that you can be something very short like that. That basically it's some kind of pairing and you relate to that pairing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. I'll just make a quick comment to do that a little later. So
that
yeah,
will,
so,
in fact, it's a life mate pairing that will go, oh, okay, I get that. It's a strange name, but it's for that kind of thing. And then critically about you is that you relate to that.
Yeah.
Like that might be a small fragment, but that actually give the audience quite a bit of that.
Yeah, I think that would add a lot.
Yeah, pretty much now for all these beats, anytime we use Podlair terms that are not known in regular parlance, we need to give some kind of very short street level what that is.
If these are actually going to be used to explain to somebody about yourself, I mean you now have to explain what that means, and so of course, if I were to go and say like, oh, it's a particular grouping I'm a part of, etc., they'd probably still be interested in knowing more about Nijiz, but then it at least gives a lead in to maybe doing a beat about Nijiz. It actually has some context. It's not just out there in the open, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you're getting at, Coach? So you don't necessarily have to
basically
explain what it is fully. You just have to make it explain a little bit.
Exactly. Give the most general context for a general viewer. And so basically taking into account that I have introduced a word, Nijiz, that's important to me, but I recognize that you don't know this word or this concept, and I don't want to burden you. But I do want what I just said to not have no meaning. So you're like, what is the shortest, most general, broad meaning that's truthful you could give? Do you know what I mean? That's kind of general principle, kind of like Zai to G on that. How you're like, okay, because you need to say that because it's important to you. Kind of like saying, oh, I'm from this religion. And people are like, what does that mean? I go over to that tree and I pray 5 times a day, and I don't eat certain foods. There's a lot more to it than that, but as far as like, basically, I have a way to what I do, and it has to do with some stuff like this. That's it. Do you mean? And that gives them just like, okay, there's probably a whole lot more to that. There usually is, but that gives you a heads up of what that, you know, iceberg tip is referencing.
Yeah. I just sit by the tree and meditate and think about things all day. Just trying to, you know, think. Yeah, because you gave the example of some, you know, a spiritualist or something. That's good.
Yeah, actually, comedians actually do a good job of that. You know what I mean? Where they give a shorthand that isn't what you would do if you're actually going to that like school, church, mosque, you know what I mean, temple, whatever. But actually, it's truthful. Like, I make comedian may say this somewhere, but anyway, like, you know, a Buddhist comes in and no one knows what a Buddhist is, but like the comedian does, and people are like, "What's a Buddhist?" And I'm like, he prays a lot and tries real hard not to get angry. You know what I mean? And like, and the Buddhist person is like, "Oh, that's such a generalization." But I mean, I guess for people who are just me,
Yeah, I mean,
those are probably things they're going to notice right away.
a Buddhist wouldn't actually. Yeah, that's true. Buddhists probably wouldn't actually try to even bother explaining to somebody in like some general parlance.
Right.
Like of course, we want to do that, but you know.
That's why, exactly. That's why it's funny that the comedian actually attempts to give like a street, quick version of what it is. The Buddhist is like, I don't think I can even explain it to you. And the comedian's like, well, it's basically like that. So there's always that, you know, what's the first things you say? It's that, you know, because you don't have a lot of time. But I think if you get, you know, life partner in there, people are like, okay, that opens up a lot of mental doors.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that sounds great. And you got another beat?
Yeah, I've got one more. I have one on Fumasta. All right. So of course I'm going to explain a little bit about what Fumasta is in here because of course that's kind of it's necessary to know a little bit in order to understand the beat. But yeah. So the Fumasta is the major personified spirit form that takes on, of course, now I have to explain what spirit form is. So maybe I might do this differently, but I'll just go through with it. So the Fumasta is the major personified spirit form that takes on the ever-evolving apex heroic form that I aspire to be, my path to greatness. My Fumasta tends to be summoned in general when I feel myself moving towards greatness in some way, and particularly so when I'm listening to music that summons that kind of spirit, or I'm having a vision about my story where I am on a path to greatness in some way. It is an experience that I really have to earn if my spirits and I are feeling becalmed or I'm not being as heroic as I could be in some other way. I simply won't be dialoguing with my Fumasta as much and having as many grand visions about my destiny as a hero.
Excellent. So I think it sounds great. One thing I would do is the spirit forming.
Like the spirit forming, yeah. Because by explaining...
I think I have a fix for that.
Yeah.
It's one I use a lot, is that what a lot of people understand who speak this kind of language is spirit guide. So you simply say spirit guide, spirit totem. Your spirit guide or spirit totem, while you give it that quality, it's like you said, what's your master, your future master, right? It's your future master spirit guide, your future master spirit totem.
Yeah.
So just say totem or guide, and people will get the gist of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, spirit guide I think is a good way. Yeah, and that really captures it. Because like some spirit forms don't really play as much of a role as guides, so this is actually a little bit more specific. I think, like, because some of them are like demons and whatever, but you know, your Fumasta is a full blown, like, you know. Yeah, exactly.
With my other, I can describe her as spirit guide, but I most often describe her as a muse. That's the word I tend to use.
Yeah.
Because even people don't know anything we're doing pod layer or even spiritual in general, they know what muse means. They have some idea. They've seen TV. that concept's been in way too many sitcoms for them not to have a general idea what that is. All right, that sounds great. So
so I can count how many beats I have, but I'm probably just like 1 or 2 off. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3, 4. I think I may have lost count, but it's I don't know. It's really close, if not already there.
All right.
So by next time for sure I'll be done, and maybe I'll probably done some practicing as well.
So before you get into the practicing, make sure that once you feel you have the kind of arc there, make sure you, and these can be your 35 and 36, it's fine. Make sure you have your intro and outro beats.
Right.
So the intro,
have I done
like
intro yet?
the intro beat is like a teaser trailer of the arc.
Yeah, so I haven't done an intro beat yet, so
And then the outro is like your kind of mission statement post arc. Now that you told about your hero, you know, and you're like, okay, this hero plans on doing this kind of stuff. Look for me.
Okay. And I went through like a variety of things I plan to do, although I haven't condensed it all in one beat. Is that what I'm supposed to do for the mission statement?
Exactly. They're both
Just
of them are kind
condense.
of the
Yeah,
intro,
because I went.
the intro is like a trailer
Mhm.
for the entire arc that's going to be coming, right? And then the outro beat is basically, now that you know that arc, the entirety of it, what you can look to see me do in the future. So you can say maybe what you're going to be vlogging or different things like that, or other things, you know what I mean? And you can say like as I mentioned, this, you kind of rattle off like all the different things like AI, this, you kind of just put it all there. So there's like a trailer for that. And then there's like, now that you know about me, here's where I'm going.
Yeah, so I ended up covering a variety of things that I plan to be doing in like 3 beats, but I'm also going to want to have a beat after that to, I guess, summarize things, I'm guessing, or
You want to summarize the entire beat, because you're basically kind of saying not just the fact that you have those 3 beats of like.
So I just want to clarify real quick. I'm trying to summarize.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying
so
to
even though I did that, I should still have a beat that summarizes.
What I'm saying is you have 3 beats where you are summarizing. Tell me if I'm wrong here. You have 3 beats where you are summarizing what your future plans are. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it covers a variety of things I plan doing.
Okay, so there needs to be an outro beat that isn't just those 3 beats. It's the entire arc. You're basically kind of saying, like, that is the adventures I've been on so far, and sort of like bring back, like, I'm going to continue. Basically, like the boy explorer is now grown up and looking forward to taking on the next phase. Does that?
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. That makes sense.
And this is actually something that is done in a lot of tribes. It's a shame that first world countries don't do this. First world obviously has a lot of advantages. That's why it's first world. But there are some things that they don't do as much. And is these coming of age rituals. And a lot of times there is that you kind of say who you are. You know, you start with, like, you go in front of the elders and you say your intro beat. I come here today to tell you about this and this and this. And sometimes the intro beat might even be a relative. Gives the intro beat. I want to have so-and-so present themselves to you. He's so-and-so from such tribe. I vouch for them, blah, blah, blah. He's got a lot of cool stories to tell you. Here he is. Boom. In this case, you'll be doing that intro beat. That often is part of that ritual in lots of tribes. And then that person steps forward and kind of says the tales of their life. Lessons they learned. I learned to do my bow at 4, if that's a big deal. I learned from the white buffalo told me that math's a good thing. I learned that at 12 years old. Do you mean? And you basically give a chronicle of you becoming an adult. And then at the end, you usually make a declaration of, like, allegiance. Now that I presented myself as an adult, I want to join that guild, or I want to go on that campaign. I'm an adult now, and I want to go do adult stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
Very important ritual.
In my case, I will have already covered several of the things I'll be saying in the mission statement. But
you don't need to focus. You can focus on simply, you are now the culmination spiritually, emotionally, psychologically of that arc. You are that arc. You mean?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
Mitchell, so do you want to, we have a little time here left, so maybe both of you can take a little time trying to play with the beat, trying to talk it out a little bit. You want to unspool some?
Right. Let's see what I can do. So yeah, basically this sort of arc, this beat is part of the one that I already explained to you, and that we're kind of splitting off. Is yeah, it's just my early interest in some things that I got into. So you heard all of that. Then I was going to get into, I was into like Disney for a while, and Pokemon and Mario, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. So those are basically all the things I want to cover. I haven't written Disney through Star Wars yet, but I'm trying to think of how they would maybe fit in. Because like we split it off at a point where, well, I don't know. I guess that could just be two beats. I guess, and like maybe it doesn't need to like fit in with one of these other beats, and there'd just be new beats after that.
Fun.
I don't know. Yeah. So I guess what thing about all of those is that I was actually studying things that like were more real, I guess, at that point. Whereas these other things are more like imaginative, which I guess probably happened when I got like video games and stuff for the first time. And not just video games, also movies. Like I like Disney movies and stuff as a kid. So basically, those united my imagination. And
so are you saying the next beat you want to talk about that transition, or more about after you've already made that transition, more real activities?
Yeah, so I guess the next beat would probably be the transition to more purely like imaginative activities, but still I guess going on the same theme somehow, which makes sense because it's like for Disney I would love to collect these figurines and stuff, and I would play with them, and Pokemon, that's also like a collecting sort of game. I would love to know all the different moves the Pokemon could learn. I would memorize that, and I would get really into the strategy of it, and how they level up and the stats, and where you can collect the different Pokemon. In fact, that game really has like a whole kind of collector sort of mindset to it. Mario, I don't know if it as much does. But yeah, I don't know how to fit it easily. But it was part of things. Harry Potter, I liked to, obviously I just love the books and the story of it. But I like to, I memorized like all the spells. J.K. Rowling, the way she wrote it, she studied different classics in college, and she was versed in Latin and stuff. So all the spells are like mixed up Latin roots and stuff like that. That really fascinated me. Now I would play like these role-playing games with my friends, which I guess was probably going to be the next beats. Maybe that's where I can fit in some of that stuff too. I think
that's pretty big on collecting things too. Those role-playing games. There's a lot of, some games you don't collect as much, but there's a common theme of collecting items or gold or
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I guess even like
or experience points.
Oh yeah.
For this transition beat, what do you think you want it to be the major like takeaways that you're collecting? Also includes you kind of mentioned the collecting thing with the diamonds, right? To your collector.
Yeah. Although I saw that as like that is where I mentioned it, and like the tabs and stuff, but because I think that's like a very overt example of it.
Right.
But I was like trying to reference like even some of the stuff before of like I would collect all of these facts and knowledge about these aspects of the world.
Right. So that is what do you want to accomplish in this beat? Is it to say that you're a collector of certain things? Is that the thing you
in the new beat? I guess I'm transitioning away from that, but just trying to like stay with that feeling.
Okay,
If that makes
so,
sense.
so I guess within that feeling of what is the if you had to say me like this, like one sentence or like one bullet point, what is the purpose of this beat?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to decide.
Because that will then give the arc for the other ones to kind of be, be their spine points on, but they need to know their purpose.
Yeah.
Well, we know that the beats were designed to say something about you, and then you felt that you wanted to say this. So this does say something about you. What is it that you want to say? Once we kind of pull it out, make it front and center, I think everything else you just said there will coalesce around that. When you told us this now, what is it you wanted me to know about you?
When I told you these things,
Because right now,
I guess what the transition will be, and I guess I kind of see where this is going, because it will end the arc at Star Wars, and one of the things that I saw that I was going to say for Star Wars, it's not the next beat, but is that it's kind of a cool sort of marriage of this, like the inner world, in the sense that it focuses on like the force and the light and the dark side, and the journey in that sense, but also the outer world of exotic planets and technologies and species and stuff like that. And so that ended up being, like, I think probably my strongest interest. And so maybe this first beat going into that could be some, like, it's like the same sort of thing, but the fact that you can do it in the inner world instead of the outer world.
okay.
That makes sense. So like you could do that for, Harry Potter and Pokemon, and Mario and Disney. You could play like role-playing games and stuff and do the same sort of thing.
So that would you say that's the purpose of this beat?
I guess so. Maybe, I don't know if there's any more I want to extract from that as far as a lesson, but I think that's basically
it. Just we want to make sure we do want everything to go into an arc, but each beat should have its own purpose, separate from it's a transitional from this beat to this beat. It's transitionalness that's useful to be part of the arc, but it can't be its primary purpose. It's got to have a higher primary purpose of.
Indeed. Yeah, no, there's definitely a purpose in saying these, because these things were important to me.
Gotcha. And that element you said is that you do it both in the inner world and the outer world?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so this one will focus on the new beat. Will kind of transition it to the inner world, and then that will culminate in, I guess, Star Wars being the last beat. I'll talk about that and how that is kind of a marriage of those things, and then that also translated into maybe my life, as far as what I see doing and how I continue to do that now. I like studying topics like exotically out there in the real world, and also more introspective topics, and try to understand my inner experience. Those two things are very important to me.
Nice. Great. All right. You want to try to grab some of those thoughts down while they're fresh, and Ben, you want to try to talk a beat out some?
Yeah. Looks like the only ones I have left most likely are the intro and the outro beats. So I guess I can work on one of those.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. These are probably actually gonna be kind of hard.
The
intro beat, like, yeah. So the intro beat, like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like I could introduce, right? I mean, it's like, as far as like introducing myself, but also following the arc, because I'm kind of, it's kind of a partially chronological arc, not fully. Like, I try to make it as chronological as I can, but obviously there's many topics that just don't necessarily fit chronologically as much, or more like there because they conceptually relate to the beats around it. But I think the intro beat is really just to give somebody like a quick summary.
And it might not even be a summary, because a lot of times trailers aren't even like a summary of the movie. They're like a teaser.
Mhm.
So basically, let's look at it this way. You just met someone at some sort of like school function, and as part of the class, you are going to introduce yourself, and you have 1 minute or like 3 to 5 sentences, whichever number you want to work with there. You have that much to basically like just give them the teaser trailer on you. So you can do whatever you want with that. You can just say like a summary style, or it can be more like, whoa, there's a lot of crazy stuff behind this door. You know what I mean? I should warn you. I mean, you can kind of like play it like that and be mysterious about what it is, but then it's gnarly. You know what I mean? Or you could just pick like saying, I'm sort of like this meets this. You know what I mean? Like take like 2 or 3 different complex things that you feel are like you, and then use them. Like from your arc, maybe pick like 3 things that are the most different, or like with saying those 3 things would be a good way to give you like a shorthand on triangulating your personality, your biography. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So this might be one
yes.
on your own, because
yeah, go ahead.
I was saying that this might be one that's better done on your own, because this one has the most like style to how you just want to like.
Yeah, there's a lot of like it's gonna take, it could take me a little bit to get a good footing on how I want to say it. It might not necessarily be something I can come up very easily on the fly. But,
exactly. Here's something that may help you, because it will require upper-level spells. Next, he just gave me something to throw your way. Is imagining that you're going and you're meeting like at a cashier somewhere or anywhere that there's going to be a short time period, but you meet a very nice Nijai, and you're like, oh, you're new here. You never shopped here before, right? You're new to town, new to that school, new to that class, whatever. And they're like, you're new here, and they're like, yeah. They're like, tell me about yourself. And they make a joke out of it. They look at their watch. I'll give you 90 seconds. Tell me about yourself. Right? So this person seems cool. They seem like they really like you. They're playing a little game of tell me about yourself in under 90 seconds. So right there, you probably tell this has a lot more of just your natural style to it. It's less so informative, and it's more like basically your first impression.
Yeah.
This person's basically saying, okay, I'm giving you 90 seconds to give me your first impression, but I am ready to like you. Who are you? Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then, perhaps then, do you have any questions about what the outro is going to be?
I think that mostly makes sense. What you described, basically.
Something comes to my mind that may be helpful to you. Another kind of like spiritual, spirit forming trick. Or not trick, but like spell, is this is very common to happen in superhero movies. It happens a lot of things, but you have superhero movies because they're an ongoing story. Usually, not always, but usually the first movie is the origin story. Usually first movie's origin story, and that's basically what you guys are doing now. They give you the arc of from childhood up to full-fledged adult superhero, and that's the first movie. And then the end of the movie, there's like a little thing where they kind of like hint, now Wonder Woman's good. Like Wonder Woman did this, for example. Wonder Woman just came out. At the end, she's like, I've learned these various lessons. I've seen these various people. I've made these various battles. And now I'm coming at the world like this. And she leaps off the building. And she basically announces to you, you can expect me to be this kind of hero in movie 2, 3, and however more there's going to be. You know what I mean? So that happens a lot. So that you're kind of at the end there, kind of like, so you kind of seen my origin story, and now further adventures will be coming.
That's great.
And you can,
I think that makes sense. And that as well isn't really, it's not really summarizing everything. It's really just, taking your arc and to a call to action.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't have to summarize really at all, because both of them assume that either they will hear the beat. So the intro is, I don't have to tell them what's in the arc because the arc's coming. The arc does the arc's job. My job is to kind of like that arc is basically you. And so the intro beat is basically how you let people know, hey, I'm a new character here in this, HRL RPG. And then they can see your arc. But obviously, there's certain things you do at first that when they see your arc, it makes some sense to how you introduce yourself, right? Same with Wonder Woman at the end of the movie. At the end of the movie, she's a mature Wonder Woman. She was like a in development Wonder Woman until the end of the movie. She's now full on Wonder Woman, and then she's like, and now I'm going to go help the world in my Wonder Woman way. That movie was really good, by the way. I like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see it on Friday. I've heard it's really good.
I quite enjoyed it. All right, Mitchell, do you got anything else?
All right, so yeah, I'm kind of thinking about how the rest of this arc is going to go together. So basically, yes, I'll have. So I already that's basically what I already did, and there's like the inner world stuff, and there's like the connection between them, and how that kind of impacted my life generally. Then I was going to talk about the next beat on here is tennis. It's like, how does that connect? That's kind of the interesting thing. So I'm think of how.
And I went out and played some tennis.
Yeah, and it's just it feels like something I should mention as far as growing up is concerned. I feel like I should have a beat on it, but
Perhaps
I still play it. But
perhaps you could make a segue sentence in the actual beat, like start it off with, not all of my pursuits were, intellectual. I did sometimes also engage the world, although not often, but in ways that I like. Your sense kind of says, I also do occasionally can say on some physical stuff. And that way, the fact that it's out of place, you kind of make that, like, you kind of address that in the first sentence. Yeah, you kind of you can make that joke because it's still within your character, but it's kind of playing off of your general tendencies. It's sort of like, I'm not devoid of interest in physical activity.
yeah, and then maybe I could even contrast to that, like maybe it gives me a kind of sense of groundedness or something like that. Kind of brings me out of my mind a bit.
That's good.
In a way.
Yeah. That says a lot about you, and it makes sense with the other beats now. The fact that it is now the main physical beat, that's okay because you've used that.
Yeah. All right, so that's good for
that. Is that good?
I guess so. And there's the topology stuff. And then I was going to get into the popular stuff. So yeah, that's the next section. So yeah, I guess that's good.
Okay,
I'll
great.
throw these out, but I'll definitely have more to share. soon.
All
I'll try to come in for Thursday.
Well,
a few more beats.
I can, end it a little early here because my dad is wanting to talk with me. So,
Awesome.
I don't want to intrude on our time or anything here. But
Like on the phone.
it seemed like things wrapped up naturally. I want to make sure you guys got what you needed here before. But if there is anything else, then we can go ahead and call it a few minutes early.
Okay. I was just wondering, and I'm not saying my business. Were you talking about on the phone, or is he there?
No, he's texting, wants to talk. So, so I haven't talked with him in a while, so we'll see what's going on here. All right, so I will see you guys on Thursday. It sounds like things are really coming along well now. And then on Sunday, Jailene will be picking what we do. It sounds like it's going to be a quiz. All right. So collage quiz coming.
Have a good
I'll
night.
be done with everything by then. So
Have a great night.
cool. All right. See ya.
Have a good night.